You need to disappear for a while. Not because you hate people. Not because you're trying to prove a point. Not because you want everyone to wonder where you went. Although, if we're being honest, a small part of the ego might enjoy that for a second. You need to disappear because there comes a point where the world gets so loud that you can't tell the difference between your own voice and the voices you've been carrying for years. Everyone has an opinion. Everyone has an expectation. Everyone has some invisible version of you they want you to keep performing. And slowly, without noticing, you start living inside a character that was built to survive other people's reactions. Maybe you felt it already. That strange exhaustion after being around certain people. Not physical tiredness exactly. Something deeper. Like your soul had to stand on its toes the whole time just to be accepted. You laughed when you didn't feel like laughing. You explained yourself when silence would have been enough. You softened your truth so nobody felt uncomfortable. You became easy to digest, easy to reach, easy to predict. And the painful part is, after doing that for long enough, you stop realizing you're doing it. The mask doesn't feel like a mask anymore. It starts feeling like your face. A person can spend years being kind out of fear and call it love. They can stay available out of guilt and call it loyalty. They can shape their whole personality around avoiding rejection and call it being mature. But deep down, something knows. Something inside you quietly watches every moment you betray yourself to keep the peace. And it doesn't scream at first. It whispers. Then it aches. Then one day, usually when life becomes too heavy or too empty, you realize you don't actually know who you are when nobody needs anything from you. That's where disappearing begins. Not as drama, not as punishment, more like closing the door to a room that's been overcrowded for too long. For the first few days, silence feels unnatural. You reach for your phone for no reason. You check who viewed your story. You wonder if someone noticed your absence. You imagine messages that never came. And there's no need to pretend that doesn't sting. It does, because constant contact can feel like connection, even when it's really just emotional background music. A notification becomes a tiny proof that you exist. A reply becomes reassurance that you still matter. Attention starts feeling like oxygen. So when you remove it, the mind panics a little. It thinks something is missing. But really, something is being revealed. Once you step away, relationships begin showing their real shape. Not immediately, and not always in some dramatic way. Life doesn't always reveal truth with thunder. Sometimes truth arrives quietly, like dust settling after a door closes. The people who only came around when they needed your emotional labor slowly fade. The ones who loved your availability more than your actual presence become confused. Some may even act hurt, not because you harmed them, but because the version of you they depended on stopped reporting for duty. That's a strange feeling, isn't it, realizing some people didn't miss you. They missed access to how you made them feel. There's a big difference between being loved and being useful. A painful difference. Some people love the comfort you provide. Some love the way you listen. Some love that you make their chaos feel less lonely. Some love the old version of you because that version didn't ask many questions, didn't set many boundaries, didn't interrupt the arrangement. But when you disappear for a while, the arrangement breaks. Suddenly your absence becomes a mirror. And not everyone likes mirrors. A mirror doesn't argue. It doesn't explain. It just reflects what's there. You start seeing how many connections were built like little emotional marketplaces. One person gives attention, the other gives approval. One gives support, the other gives a sense of being needed. One gives constant availability, the other gives just enough affection to keep the pattern alive. Nobody may be doing it consciously. That's important. Most people aren't walking around like villains in a film, calculating every emotional move. Most are just wounded, hungry, afraid, trying to feel secure in the only ways they know. But unconscious behavior still has consequences. A hand can spill poison without meaning to. The damage doesn't always need evil behind it. And then comes the uncomfortable part. You realize you've done it, too. You've wanted to be missed. You've wanted someone to notice your silence. You've shaped your words so someone would admire you. You've confused being needed with being loved. You've stayed in conversations that drained you because part of you enjoyed being important to someone's storm. That doesn't make you fake. It makes you human. But disappearing for a while removes the stage lights. Suddenly, there's no audience to impress, no role to maintain, no emotional transaction to complete. You're left with the one person you've been avoiding in small ways your whole life, yourself. At first, meeting yourself can feel disappointing. Not because you're empty, but because you expected something cleaner. People imagine self-discovery as a beautiful mountain sunrise, all peace and clarity. More often, it's like opening a storage room you haven't cleaned in years. Old fears, old resentments, old cravings for attention, embarrassing memories, unfinished grief. Parts of you that still want applause, parts of you that still want revenge. Parts that feel small, needy, angry, lonely. And you might think, is this really what was underneath? Yes, some of it, but not all of it. The gold is buried in the same place as the dust. Solitude doesn't make you pure. It makes you honest. And honesty is not always gentle at the beginning. It removes the soft filter you used to place over your motives. You begin asking why you really said yes, why you really stayed, why certain people had so much power over your mood, why being misunderstood felt like a threat to your identity. You begin noticing how often you tried to control how others saw you, as if their perception was a courtroom and you were always on trial. But people don't see you clearly most of the time. They see their fears, their needs, their memories, their wounds. To one person, your silence is arrogance. To another, peace. To someone else, rejection. Same silence, different projection. Once that lands in you, something relaxes. Not all at once, more like a fist slowly opening. You stop rushing to explain yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You stop performing emotional gymnastics to keep every relationship warm. You stop treating every unanswered message like proof of abandonment. There's a calm that begins to form. And it's not coldness. It's not becoming heartless. It's simply the quiet dignity of realizing your life cannot be built around managing everyone else's feelings about you. Distance has a strange power. It weakens the spell of the crowd. When you're always surrounded by noise, you don't notice how much of your identity is borrowed. A phrase from a friend becomes your opinion. A fear from your family becomes your limit. A lifestyle from social media becomes your desire. A wound from an old relationship becomes your personality. Little by little, the world hands you costumes. And because everyone else is wearing one, too, you assume that's just what being alive means. You don't question the outfit. You just adjust it and keep walking. But when you step away, the costume starts itching. You begin asking dangerous questions. Not dangerous because they destroy your life, but because they destroy the lie that your life was fully chosen. Do you actually enjoy the people you keep close, Or are they just familiar? Do you really want the goals you're chasing? Or did they look impressive from the outside? Do you believe what you say you believe, or did you inherit those thoughts from rooms where you wanted to belong? Questions like these don't shout. They sit beside you quietly. And once they sit there long enough, you can't pretend you don't hear them. There's an old saying often trusted to ancient wisdom: know thyself. Simple words, almost too simple. Honestly, people repeat them like decoration, but very few understand how sharp they are. To know yourself is not just to know what music you like, what food you order, what dream you post online, or what personality type some quiz gave you at midnight. To know yourself is to notice the hidden strings. The places where fear pulls your mouth into agreement. The places where guilt moves your hands into service. The places where loneliness makes you call something love because the truth would hurt too much. Disappearing for a while cuts some of those strings. Not all of them. Nobody becomes free in one quiet weekend. But enough space can show you where you've been controlled by the need to be seen, liked, needed, or chosen. And here's the part people don't talk about: freedom can feel like grief at first. Because when you stop being the version of yourself that everyone understands, you lose certain comforts. Some people drift, some get offended, some try to pull you back with guilt, jokes, silence, or that strange disappointment people carry when they realize you're no longer easy to reach. Let them adjust. Their discomfort is not always your responsibility. Imagine a bell in the middle of a busy town square. Every day, people pass by and strike it whenever they want sound. Some hit it gently. Some hit it carelessly. Some hit it just to prove they can. Over time, the bell thinks ringing is its purpose. Then one day, someone moves it to a quiet mountain temple. At first, the silence feels useless. The bell wonders if it still matters when no one is striking it. But slowly, it begins to understand something. A bell doesn't lose its nature when it isn't being used. It simply returns to stillness. And from stillness, when it finally rings again, the sound is clearer. You are not less valuable when you're unavailable. You are not less loving when you stop overextending. You are not selfish because you need silence to hear your own soul. Some people have trained you to believe your worth depends on how quickly you respond, how much you tolerate, how easily you forgive, how often you show up even when you're empty. But love that requires you to disappear from yourself is not love. It's a quiet form of hunger wearing a familiar face. As solitude deepens, you start noticing the difference between loneliness and being alone. Loneliness feels like standing outside a house where everyone forgot your name. And yes, there will be nights when the two blur together. There will be moments where silence feels less like peace and more like being left behind. But stay with it long enough and something in you will stop begging the world to confirm what you are. Eventually, you return to life, but not as the same person. Not in a dramatic way. You don't need a grand announcement, no speech, no rebranding of the soul. You just move differently. You answer messages when you have the energy. You love people without handing them the remote control to your emotions. You listen, but you don't absorb every storm. You care, but you don't collapse into everyone else's needs. And maybe for the first time, peace becomes more attractive than being important. When you come back after disappearing, the world may try to put you in your old place. That's what the world does. Systems prefer familiar roles. Families do it. Friend groups do it. Relationships do it. Someone remembers you as the helper, so they expect help. Someone remembers you as the forgiving one, so they expect instant forgiveness. Someone remembers you as the one who always answered, always understood, always made space, always softened the room. And when you don't return exactly the same, they may act like you've become difficult. But maybe you haven't become difficult. Maybe you've just become less convenient. That shift can feel uncomfortable because part of you still wants to be loved the old way. Even if the old way was draining, even if it made you small, familiar pain can feel safer than unfamiliar peace. Strange, but true. A cramped room can feel like home if you live there long enough. So when you begin choosing differently, don't be surprised if your nervous system reaches for the old cage. You might feel guilty for not replying. You might feel anxious when someone seems disappointed. You might feel tempted to explain every boundary until it sounds harmless. Take a breath. You don't have to decorate your freedom so other people find it pretty. Real change doesn't always look inspiring from the outside. Sometimes it looks like leaving a message unanswered until tomorrow. Sometimes it looks like saying, "I can't talk about this right now," without writing a whole essay afterward. And here's where the story turns. Disappearing was never the final destination. You weren't meant to vanish forever, become unreachable, and call that healing. Isolation can become another mask if you use it to feel superior, untouchable, or above human messiness. The point isn't to hate people. The point is to return to them without abandoning yourself. To love without becoming a tool, to listen without becoming a container for everything, to connect without needing the connection to prove your worth. That's the real art. A healthy disappearance teaches you who can sit outside your door without trying to break it down. It shows you who respects the rhythm of your life. It shows you who only valued the version of you they could use. More importantly, it shows you where you were still using others to avoid your own emptiness. That kind of clarity is humbling. It strips away the fantasy that everyone else is the problem. You start seeing the whole dance, your steps, their steps, the music nobody admitted was playing. From there, relationships become simpler. Not easier, exactly. Simpler. You stop chasing emotional puzzles. You stop calling anxiety chemistry. You stop treating inconsistency like mystery. People reveal themselves through patterns, and you begin believing the pattern instead of worshiping potential. Someone who values you won't need constant access to respect your absence. Someone who loves you won't shrink you, and they won't punish you for becoming more whole. Someone meant to walk with you won't require you to minimize yourself so they can feel secure. A person who has truly spent time in silence becomes harder to manipulate, not because they know every trick, more because they know their own hunger. And when you know your hunger, you're less likely to let someone feed you crumbs and call it a feast. You can sense when a conversation is pulling you back into performance. You can feel when guilt is being used as a leash. You can notice when attention is being offered like bait. The old self may still react for a moment. Sure, healing doesn't make you a stone statue, but now there's a pause. And in that pause, you get to choose. Maybe that's the gift hidden inside disappearance, choice. For so long, you may have thought you were choosing when you were actually reacting to silence, reacting to rejection, reacting to someone's mood, reacting to the fear of being forgotten. But after enough time away from the noise, your choices start coming from somewhere deeper. A quieter place. A place that doesn't need to win every argument or be included in every room. A place that understands not everything deserves your energy just because it asks for it. So when you return, return gently. Return without apology for the wisdom you gained in silence. Return without hatred for those who couldn't understand your distance. Some people can only love at the level of their awareness, and that doesn't mean you have to keep standing where they can reach you.